Pare cha na vijananti mayam etta yamamase. Ye cha tatta vijananti tato samanti medhaga. Others do not know. We here must die. But those who do understand like this, their arguments come to an end. The first word we encounter here, pare, is a nominative plural, masculine nominative plural, and we'll see it later here in ye. We see it in sabe, the long e, signaling the nominative plural. Now notice we have a cha here, and there's a cha in the next line. Often when we have chas like that, the structure is signaling both and. That's somewhat the case here. I think we can leave out the first cha, however, and say it's the case that there are others who do not understand. And then in the second line, we can translate the cha as adversative. But, and when we get there, we will address this point again. Na, of course, is negating the verb, and the verb it's negating is vijananti, coming from vijanati, to know, to understand. This is our third person present active indicative, and we would expect that given that we have pare as our nominative plural, so these agree. So we have others don't understand. Others referring to those who do not study the teaching, who do not practice the teaching, specifically the Buddha's teaching. What don't they understand? Mayam etta yamamase. Mayam etta is actually mayang etta. Mayang is the first person plural, personal pronoun, nominative. Etta is here. We here. And then I believe this is the first time we've encountered this particular verb form, yamamase. This is a first person plural imperative reflective voice. And you can see that in Deroysel. Now I think one way to understand reflective is that the doer of the verb receives the action of the verb. Now, there are two main ways that this verb seems to be taken in translation. And when you look this up, the actual, the definition given in the Pali English Dictionary is to restrain, suppress, become tranquil. So sometimes what we see in the translations is that they don't know that we here must, or that we should restrain ourselves. The other one is that we die. And that's the one I've gone for. The commentary seems to support that view, and I will put that up on the screen here. And also, the Thai translation I look into takes that point of view. I think in this case, how we would understand cessation is, or to become tranquil, is that we become very tranquil, metaphorically, that we cease, that we come to an end, we die. Now, the other interesting point here is that this verb is imperative. Imperative, sometimes I think when we think about imperative in English, we mainly think about the second person, singular or plural. In Pali, the imperative can be used with all three persons. And sometimes if an imperative is directed towards the first person, it might mean let us, similar to the hortatory subjunctive in Latin. But here, I don't think the sense says, let us die. I think it's we must die, as in an imperative in the sense, this must be done. You must do this, or we must do this. And we must do it just because it's sort of a, quote, natural law. It's unavoidable. So we must die. Now, in the next line, we see this second cha, and this is definitely adversative. This is a but. So there are pare, and they act one way, understand things one way. Then cha, ye cha. But those who vijananti, understand like this, tata, maybe understand thus, maybe a little more natural to say understand like this. The tata is pointing to mayam etta yamamase. Those who understand that we here must die. tato, consequently, which may or may not need to be included, makes it very explicit, makes the relationship of the clauses very explicit. Then we can skip over to the subject here, medhaga, that's the nominative masculine plural, strife. If we just go literally with what's given to us in the text, arguments, medhaga, arguments, the plural, samanti, cease. Notice there's no explicit connection between medhaga and the first clause here. And I think what is being left out, and keep in mind, I'll repeat myself very often, this is poetry. There are metrical constraints, so poetic license is being taken here. In prose, perhaps it would be made more explicit by saying Taesang medhaga. Taesang being the genitive plural, the masculine genitive plural, demonstrative pronoun. So in other words, their arguments cease. Or we could even understand it as the arguments of those who do understand like this come to an end. One final remark about this verse 6 is that if you go back and look at verse 5, you'll notice these are not pairs as 1, 2, 3, 4 were. 5 and 6 sort of offered this parenthetical commentary on what came before. In our next verse, verse 7, we will begin again to see this pairing structure of verses.